All right, hey everybody. Are we vibing? I liked our intro music. Thank you, team, for picking something good. All right, so I am up here to speak with all of these lovely gentlemen about non-traditional media. As Nick mentioned, I lead the growth marketing team here at Chime. That means all of our media, web, and organic marketing. I also lead our marketing strategy and operations team that keeps the whole thing rolling. And I gotta say, after talking to this crew, first thing we talked about, what is non-traditional media? And we really landed on the concept of it being about remixing. And then I got really excited, because I want to be a media DJ, remixing my stuff, you know? So whether that's new things on new channels, whether it's finding new environments to connect with our audiences, or new ways to leverage creator content. So we'd love for you all to share who you are and what your company is doing to enable brands to be DJs.
Any specific order? Can I just kick it up? All right, awesome. Lovely to be here. My first name is Anderson, last name is David. I represent a company by the name of TeamSnap, which our host just mentioned. Essentially, we are a youth sports management, communication, and marketing platform. So we serve two masters. One, we help coaches, admins, and leagues literally run their sports business. We do the rostering, the billing, the payments, all of those admin work so they can actually focus on play. So we insert ourselves into their business. And then they can extend a view to parents so they can manage the entire sports season. So you've got calendars, you've got maps and directions, you've got a whole host of things that help you literally just stay on top of sports. And from that, we've grown to a marketing channel where we have about 25 million logged in, authenticated consumers. We represent 19,000 leagues, 3 million teams, and really a full funnel marketing channel. And then beyond that, we have relationships with about 25,000 clubs and leagues across the country, so we can do on-field partnerships. Think about jersey sponsorships, field manners, the opportunity to actually have brands come onto the field for sampling opportunity. So really getting into the crevices, as we talked about, in terms of community engagement and support.
Love that, into the crevices, that's good. Okay.
Hi everyone, Joe Perello with Props, the founder of Props. We are a performance-based creator marketing platform. So far, the only one that we know of that combines the humanity of creator content and the precision and the scale and the accountability of paid media. And so we loved when Lindsay was talking about sort of remixes, because our platform is essentially putting all of these traditional things together in a very non-traditional way. So we're extremely happy to be here.
Hi everybody, my name is Scott Dahlgren, and I lead business development for agencies and brands here at Wurl. If you haven't heard of Wurl, that's okay, I'll tell you. Basically, we are an ad tech company that helps content creators create fast channels, or what we call free ad-supported streaming television channels. So if you do want to create a fast channel, you'll come to Wurl, they'll put those assets onto our platform, and then we'll enable them to monetize and distribute that content. So my remit, working with agencies and brands, is basically introducing FAST as a viable place to advertise that's experiencing tremendous growth. I think there was 200 FAST channels 3 years ago. There's over 2,000 now. Half of U.S. households are watching a FAST channel daily. So we're trying to get that message out. And then the other part of my remit is introducing a new product within those FAST channels where we enable our partners to target based on emotions. And we'll match the emotions of their creative with the emotions of the content that they're watching. So we mix it up by introducing new ways of kind of targeting people in a kind of slightly new environment.
I thought that was pretty cool. Like emotional targeting? Do I really want to know what ads I'm going to see though in that moment? Ooh. But awesome, love that. So as exciting as that all is, as brands, we really have a limited budget sometimes, and we have to make hard decisions about where do you put your dollars, how do you make sure that you're getting the maximum return, and it isn't always easy to invest in something new and something that you haven't heard of before. So we'd love to hear from you all. How do you help brands over that hurdle? What's the, how do you help them justify the investment, but also where does the budget come from?
You want to start from the out and work our way in this time?
Sure, let's do that.
Let's give it a shot. I guess everybody's coming at this from their own particular workflow, but I think with Wurl, we're lucky in that we have a number of different avenues we can explore budgets. So, we activate programmatically. So there's an argument that we can go after programmatic budgets. Our product is kind of a subset of CTV, so we can kind of explore looking at CTV budgets. But then what we're selling is unique. Emotion targeting is unique to the, marketing in general. It's new. So then you can make an argument for sort of a center of excellence or innovation budget. And then in terms of justification, I think when you're coming with anybody with new media ideas and non-traditional ideas, you need to be very clear on how you quantify and validate success with that campaign. So what we do is we'll work with third-party partners like an EDO, like a Kantar, an Innovid, in market to create basically a story, and oftentimes we'll fund that story because we're looking to prove advocacy in the market and point to these case studies.
Love that. And Joe, I know for you that's been kind of the focus is the performance aspect.
Yeah. So when we first started in 2019, our pitch was the same it is today. We're in the creator business, but we don't care about followers. We make content, but it doesn't include your brand. We drive performance, and we're not going to count the view through, only the click through. And when we pitched this, everyone said either I don't know what you're talking about, or I'm never going to be able to convince my boss to fund this, and you just started, so why would I risk my career, on picking you? And all we did was promise results. And we didn't even really design the platform. I'd love to say that we thought it through and we had all these engineers and it was all going to be performance based, but that's not how it started. The reason why we're performance based is because that was the only way to get brands to give us money. And so we made the promise and we delivered. And that opened up the opportunity for us to say, hey, this is probably a better way. That was our plan, is this is a better way. And now we have the results to prove it. So, that's one way to make traditional or non-traditional traditional. Just promise the results. And hopefully you don't screw it up.
Hopefully it works. Yeah.
Hopefully it works.
Was it coming mostly from performance marketing teams or brand or mixed?
In the beginning, it all came from experimental budgets, right? Money that they could burn. Then it came from paid social budgets, and that's where most of the budget comes from. Now it's starting to leak into a little bit of paid search, a little bit, and then display, right? So mostly that space.
Curious for the folks in the room, how many of you have an innovation, testing, R&D type budget on your media teams?
No money.
I was hoping to see more hands.
Nobody has money to burn.
Well, I think I'm super curious about your answer to this because this is obviously super relevant for Chime, and honestly, as I was walking around and telling people who's on my panel, everyone is using TeamSnap.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, so I was like, oh, cool, this is like high penetration. So can you help me answer this question so that I can then figure out how we work with you?
Absolutely. So you actually stole a little bit of my thunder. I was going to ask anyone in the audience if they've either played youth sports, coached youth sports, or been to a youth and amateur sports game. And so that's everybody, right? So that's some of the justification. Now, imagine, if you will, you have the ability to string together a bunch of youth and amateur sports leagues across the entire country and also Canada by virtue of our app. So we can leverage digital advertising marketing, videos, display, email marketing that has the ability to be addressable and measurable, right? And beyond that, we also have those on-field partnerships that can also be measurable as well. And one of the really cool things about when we do those partnerships is we partner with the clubs and leagues. So a portion of those sponsorship dollars actually goes back to those clubs and leagues to fund things like field refurbishments, to offset registration costs, to really help democratize the ability for kids and their families to play sports. So that's kind of the emotional side of the cell. The other side of the cell is the fact that we're measuring all of this. We do surveys so you can take the pulse of that audience. Because we are a benefactor and really someone who believes in the power of sport, as we all sit here, but starting with kids, right? Those are the future athletes. Those are the ones that are going to be the D1 stars. Those are going to be the ones with the NIL sponsorships. Those are the ones that are going to be playing in the pros. So we start with that. And then our approach to advertisers is basically work with us. We understand that you're doing sports marketing, but here's a different dimension. We can tell you what are the sports that makes the most sense. We can tell you what the sports seasonality is in terms of making that connection. We can also tell you where are the passion points. I've got 3 kids. There's typically 3 things that I think parents are passionate about. I'll skip one of them, but parenting and sports. We sit at the intersection of that. You want to see passion, as Lee mentioned, go to the sidelines of like a sports league or like a youth sports game. You will have the church lady using colorful language when that ref makes a bad call, right? So it's all out there. So for us, it's really about like helping them tell their stories and like leaning in, whether that's helping with the creative designs or working with those 20,000 clubs and leagues where you don't have to make a single phone call. You tell us what you want to target, where you want to target, and we'll get it done.
You mentioned helping with creative design, so I want to click into the creative components because I found this really interesting and this concept of remixing. You can't just use what you're using everywhere else, and that does mean rethinking, and I think a lot of brands don't have that in-house expertise sometimes. So you all talked about a little bit of, I was honestly surprised with how you're working with brands, so would love to dig into that. Maybe Anderson will come back to you because I know that co-creation is a huge part of what you guys focus on.
Oh, I thought you might come back to me. Yeah, so the thing is, brands can use the same creative anywhere, right? But ultimately, for it to be the most effective, you've got to be able to be additive to the content. We're reaching busy parents who are looking at their apps, trying to figure out when the next games are. So what is your message? How do you make it relevant? When are you telling that story? Are you leaning into the sports that those parents care about at the particular moment? Allow us to do that with you. So part of it is the messaging, it's the behavior of the advertising, and it's, just kind of getting a really solid feel for what you're putting on that platform to, again, make it additive to that content. And we painstakingly go through the process of working with our partners to make sure that we're servicing them, particularly new partners. We want to develop that trust and that credibility, and then also make sure we're designing surveys to be able to measure the results, because it goes beyond the click.
I like that. Scott, why don't you talk a little bit about this emotional targeting and how do I think about, like, what does that mean when I need to make an ad creative targeting and emotion?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, and I'll try to tie this back to sports. Obviously, we're here for the All-Star Game, and this is a sports-related conference. But emotions has come up a lot. There was a panelist just a couple panels ago that was talking about how her husband cries when she watches sports. So emotions have been front and center throughout this whole day. And what we do is we basically use Gen AI for our partners' creatives, which are usually 15s or 30-second spots, to analyze the emotions of that creative. And then we will then match that to the emotions of the content being viewed across all of our FAST channels. But we'll do that at the scene level before the ad break. Because a show, like a comedy, like Up, starts with a very sad scene where the person's wife dies. So you may be buying a genre comedy family movie, but you don't want to be in the scene where the wife dies.
I cried.
Yes, exactly. Or maybe you do want to be in that scene, so we can conversely target that. So, again, tying it back to sports, I think of like the All-Star Game and the NBA running spots to promote the All-Star Game. A lot of them are focusing on joy, maybe excitement, anticipation. So we know, among other targeting factors, if they can apply that level of emotional targeting on there, we just see time and time again that there'll be a lift and recall. And I think we all know this intuitively. but it's great to just be able to see it, on the research that we run. And then taking it all the way to the other side, the fires in Southern California recently. Maybe you're an insurance company, you want to talk about how you're helping trust, empathy, resilience would be themes. So similarly, we would target on those themes as well. So it works kind of across spectrum.
Love that next level precision. And really, like, how do you create that content? Creators has obviously been the unlock for a while. Curious, like, how do brands, I think sometimes they get overwhelmed by what is possible with creator content. So how do you help them really narrow in on what they really want out of that?
I just want to put a fine point on what he said. I went to a research presentation at Roku in New York City, and they had this great angle. The angle was they surveyed everyone, their mood when they were on social media. And they surveyed everyone's mood when they were watching streaming. And it was, like you're all nodding, everyone's on social media it's basically anxiety. And everyone on streaming is like happy and relaxed. And I just like, that's such a great sales pitch, to spend more money on streaming. And then you added this other angle where we know, what's happening inside the content. We're going to run you right there. It's awesome. Like, just 5 spots after Rudy is over.
Exactly.
What everyone loves. It's great. So your question was, how, you had this cool thing, like, how do you be a DJ? How do you be a brand DJ? I love that. When we say content, right? When we make content by creators, we mean sort of content when my mom thinks of content, like what you would read in, say, National Geographic or USA Today Life section or Condé Nast Travel. Like, that's when we say content. That's what we mean. We don't mean sort of branded content. And then the second thing came up a lot today, which is put the audience first. Like, what does the audience want to see or read? And I think Vineet said, imagine yourself, you're the editor-in-chief of your magazine, right? That's how we think. So if we want to get someone to join AAA, we talk about road trips or van life or adventure travel or all those different things. And those 3 things reach very distinct audiences, right? Van life is super young, adventure travel is pretty broad, right? And road trips are for families. So if I had to be a DJ, right, I would say, okay, I want to create this unique content for each individual distinct audience segment to attract them to my site, my magazine, and then retarget, to the ends of the earth until they relent and join. So we use the content to really fine tune and how we reach the right audience.
Love it. And I hear that, like, retirement van life is becoming a thing now.
I don't know anything about it.
Well, and I mean, you heard it here first, media DJs, I'm telling you, this is going to catch on. So, questions from the audience for this crew?
Anderson, I'm very interested in the platform and how you all work. Can you tell me a little bit more about the 25 million users that you have, like the demos? Does it skew one way or another? Yeah. What seems to be most successful?
Yeah, and thank you for that question. So those 25 million audience members are logged in and authenticated. The way you utilize our platform is you can simply just log in to TeamSnap, but once you're on a team, those coaches are inviting the parents and the caregivers and then the athletes that are 13 plus to actually be on the platform. 80% of our audience are parents, 12% are coaches, oftentimes parents as well, and then the balance of that 8% are athletes themselves. And it's agnostic to age or sport. We've got everything from debate club to dodgeball, book club to badminton. It doesn't really matter. But we have the ability to drill into on those sports. And there's been a couple of really cool executions that we've done. One is with a company by the name of Elf Beauty. And it's relevant because it actually started out of a brand Innovators event. I was down in South Beach moderating a conversation. And we hit on a stat that said after the age of 14, girls are quitting sports at twice the rate of boys. And shout out to Patrick O'Keefe, he was in the audience from ELF, and he seized on that. And if anyone knows ELF Beauty, they identify a cause and they drive toward it. They're one of those brands that don't just talk the talk, they really walk in and invest their time and efforts into that. I'm sure you all have seen the Too Many Dicks in a Boardroom campaign. But ultimately, we were able to craft a campaign that targeted families of girl athletes and build out a campaign that was able to return $5,000 to the winner who submitted their best ELF affirmation to be able to fund leagues for 5 different girls teams. So really, sometimes identifying causes is incredibly important too, because again, sports has like a transformative nature. I've seen it with my own kids. My eldest son is an introvert, but you get him on a basketball court and he can't stop talking. So it's building confidence and all those things. So, really just kind of taking that human experience and being able to relate it back to sports. And then of course, again, measure it. So what's it doing for the brand? Community support, net promoter score, brand lift, all those metrics we go back to.
Any other questions for our folks up here? Okay, well, I'm going to ask all of you, you gave a good one, but tell me some other awesome activations that you've done with brands.
We had a digital threat protection company. I won't tell you who they were, but they were in the prevent fraud. And our job was to tell stories on their website, which is what we do, about something related to that product, but not a branded story. Like something that could, like I said, that could live on USA Today, Live Section, or something like that. So our team, which is built on a sort of an A&R team and a record label, right? They're curating like a record label will curate talent. They found a creator who was a good writer, and her mom stole her identity. And she wrote about this, and we published it on this client's website, and obviously it killed. Because first of all, whose mom would do that? And then how do you protect against it, right? So that was like my favorite sort of, how did we ever find this poor woman who is willing to talk about this? And it obviously worked fantastic. That was one of my favorite activations, weird activations.
That's a good one though. That's like needle in a haystack, matching the creator to the brand, but awesome. I love that.
We worked with a pretty large QSR company, fast food, and ran their creative, put out an analysis of the emotions, and then matched it. And what we found is when you combine joy and anticipation, it actually equals hunger. So we measured store visits and the amount of sales per visit against 9 other tactics that they were running, and we came out as the #1 tactic. So there is something to emotions and just being receptive.
Joy plus anticipation equals hunger. Good to know. I'm very intrigued by this. I'm curious, AI is taking over, obviously. That's a great example. Are the rest of you seeing that come up, either on the client side when you're working with them, or things that you're exploring in your next iteration of what you're doing?
Yeah, we're using AI to essentially scale, right? So we use it to, simply stated, identify the characteristics of high-performing content campaigns. And it's the subject matter, it's the creator's personality, which we can measure, it's the image components, like that's not a new idea. It's all those, and then it's the audience, and then how far down the funnel are you trying to go, and then in which industry. Right? So if you can answer those 5-6 questions, you can create the characteristics of high-performing guy. You can just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. So that's really what we're honed in on that. Not really making ads and all that stuff, because the creators make beautiful things. And we use it to sort of augment or edit, but their ideas are fantastic, and they're also engaging with us so they can express themselves, which is part of the appeal of props. So we don't want to sort of get AI in the middle of that. It's sort of better suited to figure out what works and replicate.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about Amira?
Yeah, I think because we're a utility platform first, right? So we have to lean in it that way, right? It's more about what's the benefit of that user? Can we create custom player cards to make it more interactive so they can send to, you can send it to your grandma, or like be able to stream your game or your home runs or stolen bases or 3-point shots. So we would lean into it. I mean, there's a lot coming with the new platform in the future, but it starts with that utility and then finding ways for brands to be able to participate, because that's the level of authenticity that we really want to keep and maintain that's unique for the platform and youth sports in general.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, AI is core to everything we do. We're analyzing billions of hours of content, literally, and not just the dialogue, but the sounds, the imagery. So it's a very three-dimensional look at the motions of the scene. So you couldn't do it without AI. The service wouldn't exist. So for us, it's a core foundation.
Yeah, that makes sense to build on that. Okay, I got kind of a spicy question that I didn't tell these guys I was going to ask them, since this is a reverse panel. So, as a brand, how can I be a better client when I come to you interested in working with you and your company?
Great question.
Answering any.
No, it's going that way.
No, I'll answer. So that's a really good question. Number one is, I would say, be transparent about what you already know about your audiences. That's really important. Because look, it's so marketing is hard. It's always super smart people in here all trying to figure out marketing, and there's a lot of competition, especially in this country. So first thing is, when we have a client and they say, here's our audience segments, here's what we know about them, here's what to stay away from, here's why these people do this and why they don't do that, that sets us off on, we're always successful when a client tells us the truth about their audience segments. And the second thing is, when you're in a pilot, don't give us the thing that you have failed at for the last 10 years. Let us cut our teeth on the thing that will work, and then we'll go and figure out how to get men to do therapy. That'll be the second. That's our second one.
Like that. Well,
I would just say, we hope that brands can try to avoid conventional thinking and really show some humility in being able to adapt and maybe say, okay, there could be a way of doing things that we haven't done in the past that we're willing to try. And I think it's very easy to fall on conventional thinking because it's oftentimes safe. So we're pushing the boundaries here. We're learning somewhat in real time, but we're standing next to our partners and willing to validate the results. But I just think that conventional thinking is dangerous.
I would say be transparent about your goals and objectives, right? So if it is lower funnel or if it's awareness and consideration, let us know that. Understand or tell us what success looked like, right? How are you measuring that? So that way we set the campaign up for success. But in addition to that, be curious, right? The idea of marketing is that it isn't an exact science. Oftentimes, innovation comes from being able to test and learn, right? So we want to take that journey with you. So no one's going to get fired for adding more money to Google, Meta, and all these other places, but ultimately, when there's a line item that's really unfamiliar, it's scary. But through that curiosity, you start learning something about your brand, about yourself, and it's okay to test and learn. It's an opportunity. We we understand it's a partnership. And I think all of us, as we sit here, you know, whether it's like budgets coming from emerging marketing or coming from innovation or digital or whatever the awareness budgets, B2B budgets, whatever it is, you know, we'll walk that walk with you and really just kind of embrace and hold your hand and help you get there. So we just want to make sure that it is a two-way street in terms of that transparency and curiosity.
We really appreciate those answers. Thank you. Well, any other questions before I give you all some time with a break here? I expect to see a lot of talking to these fellas because this stuff is cool. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.